Hey guys, it's Varun here. I thought I'd try something new and make a couple of videos for you guys to watch. I know we don't have that much time in meetings to go over all the material that I'd like to cover, but I think if you guys are able to watch these videos, then we'll be able to get a lot done out of meetings. And I know you guys are busy, but if you guys could really watch these videos when you have time, it'll really help us get going. So for this video, I'm just going to go over a couple things that we covered in our last meeting. I know a lot of people had to miss it because they were studying for finals, and I believe there was some sort of test that day. So yeah, I'll just go over what we did, and yeah, so let's get to it. So we just covered how to get started with Android Studio, and so what is Android Studio? It's just development environment. It lets us code run, and it even lets us test those Android apps without even having an actual Android phone. So no matter what phone you have, if it's an iPhone or some sort of Android device or it's a Windows, whatever you have, no matter what, we can always test it. And yeah, so that's the great thing about Android. So some basic things that I might talk about later on. Building, just putting together an app. Um, APK is kind of like the file name for an app. Activity we'll talk about more later. It's basically a page in an app. A drawable is some sort of image or background or other visual content. And DP is it's sort of it's a unit, and it allows us to achieve a sort of similar size. So, for example, if I have a phone and my phone is really low quality and it doesn't have that many pixels on the screen, I want some image to look the same on my phone as it's supposed to look on a new phone. So the new phone with more pixels and the old phone with not as many pixels have the same look. And SDK is just software development kit. That's just your standard SDK. So, getting started with making your first app. Obviously, the first thing you want to do is start Android Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll wait for that to get going. So some of the things you'll see when you get started, you'll see a nice welcome screen. And we'll see all this. And we'll wait until it gets going. Alright, and we're back. So this is what Android Studio looks like when it opens up. Right here we have a couple options for starting a new one, opening one that you already made, and all these other ones that we can talk more about later. On this side you'll see if you've started an Android Studio project before, any of the stuff that you've opened before will appear over here. Some of the stuff I messed around with. But we want to start a new Android Studio project, so we're going to go ahead and click over here. And we're going to start a new one. All right. And we have a couple options. So the first thing we want to do is name our app. So we're just going to name it, let's just name it Hello World. Hello World app. And this company domain over here is, it's sort of a way for you to say this app is mine. So for example, if we had a website that we owned and we want to claim this app as our own as well, we could put our company domain over here, and that's a way for us, for other people to identify this app as being made from us. So we have our own club website, so let's go ahead and put that down. helloworldclub.weebly.com. Alright. So we'll just go ahead and hit next. You can also change where your projects are saved. Mine are just saved over here. And you just want to go ahead and hit next. Alright, this is something that you probably shouldn't worry about too much, and go ahead and hit next. But if you want to know what this is, it's basically, it allows you to specify what level of Android you want to make an app for. So for example, the default is given as 4.0.3. and this level is basically, as you can see, 96% of Android users have this version or something above it. So if you develop an app for this version, it'll run on that version as well as anything above it. So as it says over here, by targeting this level, your app will run on approximately 96% of the devices. So that's pretty much everybody. So we'll go ahead and hit next. All right, and so here is where that word activity comes in. And as we talked about over here, an activity is basically like a page in the app. So a page the first page we want in our app. We don't want anything in it. We just want a blank page with nothing on it, so that we can do what we want with it. So in that case, we just go ahead and hit empty activity. And there's a lot of other activities that we could have in here that are nice to use, and so that we don't have to actually go in and make these on our own, but we're given this template. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and hit empty activity and next. And here is where the final step is. We get to name that activity that we just created. So by default, it's given as main activity. I'm not going to change this for now, but you can go ahead if you want to and just change this to my activity. Generally, it's good practice to leave that word activity in there, so that when you look at this file later on, you know that that file is an activity file and not something else. So we'll just go ahead and leave it as main activity and hit finish. And now we're going to wait for this to load, and we'll be right back after that. Alright, so once it's finished loading, the first thing you'll see here is this Java file. And there's a couple things to take note of when you see this Java file that we learned, or some of the things that we learned when we're learning Java. You can find some of those things right here. So this first thing, the package. This package is sort of like a unique identifier for our app. And if you remember when we named our website, it's actually, our website is right here, but it's backwards. So it's just kind of like an identifier for our app. And the next thing you'll see here is an import statement. Imports just imports some things that we can use. And finally, the most important, now we get some important stuff. And when you see here, we see public class main activity. And main activity is, of course, what we named our class when we were first making the app. And you'll see here is where it says extends app compat activity. Now the words app compat aren't as important as activity, but what this word extend means is it says give this class right here the functionality of this activity, or whatever you have in that extends, whatever's after the extends. So in that case, we have an activity here, and what that is saying is give this class all the functionality of this activity. So we want this class to act like an activity and be able to do everything that an activity does. And if you remember, an activity is page. So we want this activity to control the page and be able to do whatever the page does. Alright, and so that's what that does. Now, the next thing you'll see here, you'll see this method, and you'll remember what methods are, but you probably won't have seen this statement here called override, and this word protected here is probably also new. So when Android makes an activity, it has this thing called an activity lifecycle. And the lifecycle is kind of like all the methods that are run when the page is made. So for example, when the page is first created, you can see the first thing it does is run this onCreate method. So what happens is Android runs this onCreate method as soon as this page loads. So as soon as the page loads, whatever's in the method between these brackets, whatever's in here is going to be run by Android automatically. We don't need to say, we don't need to do the thing when we learned in Eclipse with the system.out.print, out.println. We don't need to do any of that, because Android Studio recognizes this as a method that it needs to run, and that is shown right here with the override. The override means Android is going ahead and taking control of this method on its own, and it's running it as soon as this page is created. So saying that, what's in this method? So the first line you see is this super.onCreate method. Basically, it says if there's any previous saved information. What this saved instance state means is it has some information containing whether the page was created before or not, but we won't worry about that for now. But the second line is more important. It says set content view to r.layout.activityMain. Now the first thing you see here is this R. What is R? And this R actually stands for resources. Now you're probably thinking, where's the resource? I don't see resources anywhere here. But actually it's in this folder right here. And over here it's res, over here it's R. They're both the same thing. So in this resources folder, if you look, you have a bunch of other folders. So you have a drawable, and if you remember what the drawable was some sort of image. And the next folder is layout. And if you see here, the layout is the same folder that's referring to over here. So what it's saying is go to the resources folder, go to the layout folder, and go get this file activity-main. And that's what's inside the layout folder. And as you can see, that's also the other file that's open over here. So this is our XML file, as you can see with the .xml. And in our XML file, this is where what our page looks like. This is where that is controlled. And the important thing to note is XML has a very different style to Java. There are no classes, there are no methods. Everything runs in tags, and tags are between an less than sign, yes, a less than sign, less than sign and a greater than sign. So they're between what you call tags, and every tag has to have an opening tag and a closing tag. So here you see we have this relative layout, and we'll talk more about what this layout is. We have this tag, and it starts with an opening tag, which is indicated by these two, and also a closing tag down here. So the only difference between the opening and closing tag is the opening tag contains all this information in it and no other symbols. And over here we have no specific information like we do over here, but instead we just have this backslash and the words relative layout and the tag. So that's what an opening tag and a closing tag is in XML. But also you'll see here that this tag called text view, this tag doesn't have two separate tags like we do over here. It's just one. And the way we have one is we open and close it all within one tag. So instead of separating it out like we do over here, we just open it like we do normally, but instead of just having a normal greater than sign, we also add this backslash before it. So that indicates to the XML that this tag is closed and there's nothing more to that tag. All right. So we'll talk more about this relative layout tag and all the different types of layout tags and all the different types of XML tags later in a different video. But for now, that's pretty much the main point for XML. Just knowing how tags are opened and closed so that you have good syntax and good practice. So that's what the XML tag is, and that's also how the Java file runs, as we explained with the R is the resources folder, the layout is this layout folder, and the activity main is talking about is the activity main.xml file. So I think that wraps up this video. I know I covered a lot of stuff in it, but I hope it really helps because I know a lot of people weren't able to make it, like I mentioned earlier, to the meeting, and this is sort of a way for you to learn it on your own time instead of having to show up for the meeting. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll try to make some more videos so that we can get further before the next meeting. But that'll do it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.